Note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation although through that permission, a chair and a quorum will be physically present when this act and its extension expires. We have, joining us tonight are members of the school committee and various members of district administration and leadership teams. We'll conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes will not display all participants. Please remember that any audio video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to ask President Abel to conduct a roll call vote to ensure you're all able to hear and we can hear you this evening.
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. We have a number of remote participants. We have Student Representative Cameron Pisano.
Here.
Great. We have Zanab Ba.
Here.
Great. And we have Emma Judge.
Here.
In the room, we have Student Representative Julia Bissett and Jaden Aravallo. I'll get it one of these times. We also are joined by our citizen representatives, Lorigan Sudak.
Here.
And our citizen representative, Allison Driscoll.
Here.
Great. We have our leadership team, Dr. Andre Morgan, joining us remotely.
Here.
And then present in the room, we have Kate Twombly.
Here.
And we also have Dr. Suzanne Trocek.
Here.
In the room, we have Miss Erin Brown
Here.
and Principal Betty Taylor. Also present, we have Jody Elder. And the school committee members of this standing committee, Dr. Jeffrey Silva,
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson,
Here.
and I am Ms. Rachel Abel. I believe we have 11 voting members today. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to just ask Dr. Silva to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we would like to just see if anybody would approve the minutes from our October 12th meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I will second that motion.
And again, President Abel, would you please?
Sure. So for our voting members, Julia Bissett. Yes. Jaden Aravallo. You're going to help me learn that. I go by Abel or Abel, whichever. But I'll try to learn. Cameron Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you. Zanaba. This is for the minutes. Oh, we just didn't hear you. Is that a yes? Emma Judge.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. And Lorigan Sudak.
Yes.
Allison Driscoll.
Yes.
I believe that is our 11 voting members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who's the 11th? Kate, Kate? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I knew there was one more. Okay. Thank you so much. 11-0.
Okay, and now we would like to turn it over to Kate Twombly for our updates from our student representatives.
Wonderful, thank you. I am going to introduce them and then quickly turn it right over to them. So first, we're going to hear from Beverly High School Representatives Cameron Pisano and Emma Judge to update us on student life at Beverly High School. Who would like to go first? Cameron, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go.
All right, great, thanks.
So seniors were given the opportunity to attend college field trips to places like St. Anselm's, UMass Lowell, and North Shore Community College. For STEM Week, students during advisory learned about career opportunities STEM has to offer, including STEAM, which incorporates concepts and practices of the arts. On October 27th, there was an informative presentation by North Shore Community College for understanding financial aid. And lastly, Beverly High School practiced an Alice lockdown drill and went over procedures during advisory.
Great, thanks, Cameron. Emma, would you like to add?
Yeah, so obviously with the November 1st deadline for a lot of schools, early action and early decision deadlines. So we got all of that and stuff in. So I was able to go to Miss Quill and in guidance and send my stuff out. They've been having like routinely colleges come in and be able to talk to students. And obviously I'm a senior, so you know, there were a lot of seniors, but there were also a lot of juniors who would go and visit. And in one of my clubs, we're actually working on creating a advisory lesson against hate speech.
Fantastic. Thank you, BHS. And now I'm going to introduce first Julia Bissett from 8 Hale, and then followed by Julia will be Jade Naravallo, who will talk from the perspective of 8 Cabot.
Grades 5 and 6 recently participated in the first ever Boo Bash on Friday, October 28th in the evening here at BMS. This was the first ever fundraiser of its kind here at our school. With amazing staff and parent volunteers in attendance, BMS hosted over 500 students for gym games, movies, a dance party, bingo, a craft, and food. It was a super fun time for all. In total, grade 6 raised $7,594 to go towards the Nature's classroom field trip. It has been a busy fall at BMS after school with many new clubs starting. Flag football has been running after school, and the teams are now headed into the playoffs soon. Board Games Club has been a new popular addition. The STEM Club was so popular that now we have 2. The musical is taking place and is sure to be spectacular.
Thank you, Julia. And Jaden?
This week, Grade 7 was visited by the NAN Project. Grade 7 students took part in the small group assemblies held by NAN Project peer mentors to educate about the struggles with mental illness and other issues facing young people, but more importantly, discuss the supports they were able to access and the coping strategies they have employed to find a path to recovery. By presenting these stories, NAN Project staff created a safe space for students to talk about mental health. In these presentations, we also covered the signs and risks of a peer who may be struggling, as well as how to get them help in a crisis. Lastly, the school hosted an amazing curriculum night for the parents on October 19th. Parents were met with interactive presentations by all departments and teams, meets and greets, a rousing presentation of the 6th grade house system, and even pickleball and putting a pudding green in the gym.
Which I took part in. I didn't get it in on my first try, though. Thank you all very much for your updates. And Zanab is online joining us, Zanab Ba, and she is joining us, but will be presenting at the next meeting. They've been taking turns. Thanks, Zanab.
I think that brings us to some of the information. I'm going to share my screen up there, if that's okay. I'm going to ask Erin Fitzpatrick to join us first up here at the microphone, and she is going to share with us. Hold on one second. All right. She is going to share with us. We have a couple things that we're going to bring to you tonight. First is the crisis management, and Erin is going to share with us some of the things that have been going on in our schools as we work together. We heard a nod earlier from one of the students about some lockdown practices, and Erin's going to give us a little more insight as to what's been going on at each school and introduce a new aspect of our training that we're sharing with staff. So. Green.
Look at that. Just wanted to update a little bit on the school safety work that we're doing this year. So far this year, we have conducted for all of the staff an ALICE training, sort of an update to our lockdown procedures. We did that in September at Beverly Middle School and at the high school during one of our professional development times. We then in October conducted the majority of our lockdown drills, our first session of lockdown drills. So we've completed, all of the elementaries. The McEwen did a teacher-led practice, and then Beverly High School also had theirs last week as well. Beverly Middle School will go later this week or early next week. So we'll have that all completed early November. So that is it for our lockdown drills and practice with that. The CSTAG model is new to us. Officer Fiore and myself were trained last year with our work with NEMLIC. But at this time, the Beverly Schools is making sure that we have people trained in all of the buildings. And I'm going to go over just a little bit about what this is. The CSTAG model is a comprehensive school threat assessment guideline. And it's out of the University of Virginia sort of initiated some of this training. But we are sending like 3 or so from each building.
A total of 32 staff.
Okay. So there'll be at least 2 to 3 staff members in every building that will be trained in this model. There's an online training, and then there's a actually in-person training that's actually fairly soon, I think.
Correct. So the first group goes tomorrow.
Okay.
And the 32 staff are divided into 2 groups. One group tomorrow, and in another group, I think it's the Monday after the Monday before Thanksgiving.
So this is really just an approach to make sure that we are really reviewing any information that we get that might contain a threat. So any safety concerns that might come our way in the schools, our job is, and we have always done this, but our job is really to review the information and then make decisions and make determinations. So for this model, it just helps us formalize kind of what we're doing. It's got some pieces to it where we utilize forms, we utilize sort of a tracking method, and then make our determinations if any safety plans, are needed, if that makes sense. And then we have, let's see, my eyeglasses. So we will have teams in every single school. Like I said, Steve Fiore and I have already been trained. Staff members are being trained this week and further. The next steps for us in terms of that will be to review sort of our model as we go forward, make sure that we're just outlining best practices for us in terms of our data collection and how we're going to do that. We also, for the rest of this year, want to make sure that we do another round of lockdown drills. Those will be scheduled in the spring. We also want to look at our SEOP, sort of our emergency operation plan, just to make sure that it's current and that we feel like it's reflecting best practice at this time. And then finally, we'd like to work on just a district-wide reunification kit so that we make sure that we have plans in place if we ever needed to reunify families at a different location than our school. So those are some of the sort of next steps for us for this year. Any questions or, yeah. Yeah.
I'll call on Dr. Silva first.
Thank you. I wonder, how is the police station and the fire department representatives sort of tied into these activities?
Yeah. So I forgot, and some new members. So we have some members that are, first of all, I'll introduce Erin Fitzpatrick is one of our school adjustment counselors. She's an adjustment counselor at Ayers, but she's also the person who is facilitating for us our district crisis team. Our district crisis team consists of community members. So we meet about probably 3 or 4 times a year to kind of go over in the beginning when we were first forming. We did the creation of the COP. We did a lot of work with tabletop activities. We looked at the plans at each building and have, there are groups of people that have been working on it. So it includes leadership from the fire department, leadership from the police department, leadership from the Department of Public Works, our transportation director, as it would be important to be able to, have transportation at that time.
Food services, yep.
Food services. So, because, sometimes it's as simple as I remember a case about 10 years ago when all of the students at Centerville had to be moved to North Beverly for, I don't know whether, for whatever particular reason. And so we learned a lot from that. And so we've been creating plans about evacuation plans. And what do you do when you have to displace students, and that whole reunification piece about how do we let parents know where to pick students up? And now you have 800 kids leaving the North Beverly school instead of 400 kids. And so how do you make sure you're able to kind of do that safely and carefully? So those kinds of things. But we do have a district-wide crisis management team. And in addition, Erin also serves on NEMLEC. And I don't know if you're familiar with what NEMLEC is, but I call it the STARS team. I don't know if that's the same name, but that's a group of for regional. So county-wide, is it Essex County or?
It's it comprises of a lot of northern Essex, Massachusetts, for the most part.
And so often, if there's a crisis in another district, Erin and Officer Fiore will be called to go join the team, and they will respond in other districts. And so that's a commitment that we made as part of Erin being part of that team. And likewise, should we need it, they would be available to come and work with us. So that's how it's a much broader piece. I think what we're introducing today is a new layer for us. We've had the security team in place for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
But the layer around the threat assessment and what do we do around individual students when we need to make some assessments. And, in the past, we know we have mobile crisis units that can come, and we know that we have, other options. But creating this unified, consistent understanding across all the schools with you had a great word in there, I don't remember what it was, but, kind of consistent across all the schools, right? And a consistent response so that we take every single bit of information that comes our way seriously, and this helps us sort, okay, where does this fall across this continuum of threats to make sure that we're not overlooking anything and that we're taking the corrective action as something comes along. And it is part of the ALICE, it's kind of aligned with the ALICE procedures and protocols that we use. So.
My question was, you said there were 2 to 3 members from every building. Is it administrators, teachers?
Yep. So it's the principal and likely the school adjustment counselor at each of the elementary schools. And at the middle school and high school, there's probably 5 or 6 from each building. I think there's a couple administrators. Yeah.
It's the whole leadership team and then some of our adjustment counselors.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And 4 or 5 police officers as well are part of that same training. And the training that we're going to is through the Rockport Police Department. They organized it sort of for the general area, and so districts from all around are sending folks to that training that they put together.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Erin. All right, and now next, just a quick update from Jody. I've had some questions around some of the trainings that we do in school around safety for students, about walking and biking and that. So Jody is here to kind of fill us in a little bit on that.
Sure. A bit of a lighter topic to go over the Mass Safe Routes to School program. And I took this directly from the mass.gov website. The Mass Safe Routes to School program really works at increasing safe biking and walking among all of our students in elementary, middle, and high school by using a collaborative, community-focused approach that really bridges the gap between health and transportation. So historically, the Beverly Public Schools have had a long-standing relationship with the Mass Safe Routes to School. And school nurses throughout the district have worked with the Safe Routes staff, our liaison, with school staff and with the PTOs in creating and doing bike and pedestrian safety, rail safety, walk to school days, and bike rodeos. And for obvious reasons, over the last year and a half, there's been a little bit of a decrease in traction in the Mass Safe Routes to School because the nurses across the district have been doing pandemic management primarily. And there's been a lot of change in staff. And so in the 16 months that I've been in my role, I've had almost a 40% turnover in my staff. So we have lots of new nurses in the district. And the liaison at Safe Routes has also taken another role, so we have a new liaison to work with us. However, having said that, this picture here is a picture of the bike rodeo at Ayers that took place in September. We do have some veteran nurses in the district who worked with PTOs and who have really launched programs this year. We had the bike rodeo at Ayers. We've had a walk, roll, and ride to school day at Hannah and Centerville so far. So where are we now? So I have met with the new liaison for Mass Safe Routes, and she and the old liaison will be coming to the professional development day for our nursing group on December 9th, and to get the group really up to speed in terms of pedestrian and bike safety curriculums, with the goal of having second graders be trained in pedestrian safety, fourth graders be trained in bike safety, so that'll take care of the elementary school. The middle school will do some rail safety, and the high school, which has historically not been involved in this partnership, but Mass Safe Routes is really putting a push out to get high schools involved in terms of pedestrian and bike safety as it relates to distracted walking and riding. So not just texting, but also with doing that with AirPods in. With the goal of there being participation in all of our schools at the flagship event, which is the second week in May. Walk, bike, and roll, I think it's called, to school day. The short-term benefits are obvious, the health and wellness and the physical and mental benefits that you get from moving your body before school. Anecdotally, we've seen a lot of students sort of have a sedentary lifestyle over the last year and a half, so this will be really great for them. Long term, and I'm actually interested in this as well, there's a link, according to the Mass Safe Routes folks, between attendance and walking and biking to school, being able to get yourself to school. There's an opportunity for students to be involved and peer leaders to kind of teach some of the younger schools and really have this be a true collaborative effort. And of course, with the district's interest and direction of sustainability, this ties in nicely with that, with maybe keeping some cars off of the road.
All right.
That's it.
So,
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of also working with Mass Department of Transportation last week at the Mass Association of Superintendents and School Committee Member Conference down in the Cape. And Safe Routes presented the Beverly nurses with this award. And it will be my pleasure to actually pass this over to you to share with your team.
I will share this. Thank you very much.
yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right, thanks, Jody. And finally, the last item on our agenda is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey results. Dr. Richard Boy is here to present to us some of the results. We conduct our Youth Risk Behavior Survey every other year, if I'm correct on that? Every 2 years, yep. Except during the pandemic. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. He is here to share with us the results of, make sure you turn your mic on, with the results of the survey that was conducted for us in the spring of 2022, correct? All right.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate the chance to be here again. I've presented these results, I think it's now the fourth time, every 2 years. Anyway, there are some sort of descriptive slides about the how the survey is done. I'm going to try to go through those pretty quickly and get to the results, since that's what I think you're most interested in. The purpose of this, this is just a brief report, not a total report, of the methods and findings from the two surveys, one with the high school, one with the middle school. They're intended to address questions about, the current situation of youth in Beverly in terms of risky behaviors primarily. I'll only say a few words about the development of it. It's the survey we do here, the two of them, are based on nationwide surveys, and so we have some comparative data as a result. This national system has been going since 1990. It started out as a high school survey. They then expanded it to a middle school one as well. It's somewhat shorter. The content of the survey, as I mentioned, it has to do with primarily with risky behaviors. As you can see, the topics that are covered are personal safety, bullying, depression and suicide, a number of questions about various types of substance abuse, sexual experiences, health, nutrition, physical activity, sleep, all kinds of things. The two surveys are quite similar. The high school one is a little longer. The middle school one is similar but somewhat shorter, and somewhat different questions. This year, the survey was administered in the spring, as it has been in previous years, to 638 middle school students and 413 high school students. This accounted for 32% of enrolled high school students. I'll say more about that later. It's less than in previous years. And 86% of the enrolled 7th and 8th grade students in the middle school. There, as in the past, the survey is not administered to 6th grade graders. The surveys were administered online during school hours using materials prepared by the IT department. They, in turn, provided the data to me, and I've spent some time this summer pulling it together, two reports, one on the high school data and one on the middle school data. This is simply a kind of brief summary. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in the report that's not going to be presented tonight. Is it necessary to talk about survey validity and whether the kids are telling the truth? Maybe I will say a few words about that. It often is a question that lurks in the background. We try to assure validity and accuracy with as large samples as we can get. Prior parental consent is obtained. Each student is free to respond or not respond to either the survey as a whole or any individual question. No names on the surveys, and so far as I know, there has never been any problem of anybody's responses becoming known to anyone. We cross-check responses. This is done partly to just eliminate anyone who may be sort of randomly responding. It's easy enough to check on things that are sort of logically impossible by comparing questions. Then we assess the patterns of responses against known patterns of behavior. For example, if PE participation goes down, well, on the survey you can check that against what's actually occurring. And then we use multiple data sources. We compare the data this year with previous years, with surveys for Massachusetts as a whole, and so on. So that's that. Then we make comparisons within Beverly, by just your own perceptions of what's important. We can compare by grade and gender. We compare current survey with past ones, and then we have data from for the high school, for the statewide YRBS, and then the middle school, there's a survey called the Massachusetts Youth Health Survey that we can compare with. In both cases this year for 2019. Okay, to get to the findings, the bottom line, at least seems to me, you can look at the data, is it's mostly stable since 2019. With some good news and a few areas of concern. Most reported rates of high-risk behavior for students in Beverly are similar to those in 2019. The next two slides summarize the findings, first from the high school and then the middle school by area. That turns out to be a little small, isn't it? Anyway, as you can see, most of those represent groups of questions. Safety, violence, sexual and dating violence, bullying, depression, and so on. Most of them are very similar to 2019, which, by the way, was the year before the pandemic. There's one area that clearly is a little bit better, and that is substance use. And a couple of mixed areas, sort of potential issue areas, sexual and dating violence, depression and suicide, and nutrition, dietary behavior. For the middle school, as you can see, there are fewer categories. They are all either similar and, in one case, a little better. The better one is, again, substance use. All right, let's dig into the specifics. This is the substance use one. As you can see, drinking in the high school, this is current drinking, past 30 days use. As you can see, drinking is the most frequently reported form of current substance use in the high school. It is holding steady in terms of reported current use. Marijuana use and vaping are the second and third most frequently reported forms of substance use in the high school. And reported use has declined since 2019. And reported drinking, vaping, and marijuana use in the middle school are all 2% or less, and have declined since 2019. This is good news. However, in sharing this with the principals and nursing staff and so on, there's some skepticism about the accuracy of this. I rechecked the figures. It's a puzzle. It's, as you can see, clearly improved. Okay, the next area is bullying. The current rate for the high school, it's stayed pretty stable, as you can see. Current rates are slightly higher than Beverly rates in 2019, but still lower than the rates for Massachusetts in 2019. There are similar rates of bullying in school and electronically for the high school. For the middle school, again, it's stable, possible slight improvement, but much higher rates of reported bullying in the middle school than in the high school, as you can see. Possible small declines in reported rates of both types of bullying since 2019. Dating and sexual violence is another of the areas where this, by the way, is not asked of the middle school students. This is only asked, these questions are only asked of the high school. As you can see, there's been a slight to moderate increases in reported rates on all of these variables since 2019. You know, from 5 to 8, 7 to 12, 6 to 15 for each of these. I should also mention these all go up by grade level as well and are much more frequently reported by girls than boys. Depression and suicide is another area that where there may be an issue. For the high school, there were slight to moderate increases in reported rates on all of these variables since 2019. And for the middle school, there was little change. Current reported rates are very similar to previous ones. The reported rate for depression is lower than that for the high school. In the middle school, the reports for suicidal ideation are not directly comparable to those in the high school. Unfortunately, I think this was an oversight. We added the question about depression to the middle school survey, but for the 12-month period, but did not alter the others. Those were asked forever rather than in the past 12 months. We do know that they haven't changed since 2019. The next area is physical activity. Current rates for physical activity are similar to those for Beverly in 2019 and higher than the statewide figures in 2019, which is good. And the rates of reported participation in physical education increased from 2019 in the high school and for some reason declined in the reported, at least declined in the middle school. Health and safety, these are basically questions about sleep and eating breakfast. There was little change from 2019, with middle school students reporting getting more sleep than high school students. And again, regarding breakfast, again, little change with possible very small declines. There were a series of new questions asked this year that have never been asked before. I think associated mostly with interest in trying to understand the effects of the pandemic. As you can see, students were asked to agree or disagree with these various statements. I feel like I'm connected to my school. There is at least one adult at school I can talk to. There's at least one adult at school outside school I can talk to. I found remote learning challenging. I experienced increased anxiety during the pandemic, and I can hardly read that last one. I have healthy strategies to relieve stress and anxiety. My reaction was that they were the high school kids and the middle school students, or generally pretty similar in the rates of agreement with these various statements. They were least likely, both groups, to agree with statements about having a positive connection with school, and to have healthy strategies to relieve stress and anxiety. Just what to make of that, I'm not sure, since we don't yet have data to compare it with. There are several sort of special caveats or considerations this year that have not been true for previous surveys. One is the small sample size in the high school. 32% is nowhere near ideal, and is in some ways the biggest change from the past. Always in the past, the survey response rates have been 3/4 or more, and we've discussed it, and I'm not, yes.
Sure.
How is the 32% chosen? How of the high school? How is the
So I'm not really sure. Betty, do you have a response to that? Because I'm not as aware, and I know that you and Dot met with him. So the question is, do you have any thoughts as to why the response rate at the high school is only at 32% compared to years past?
So the survey is given to all the students. So what Dr. Roy is saying is only 32%
participated.
responded.
I see.
That was, we did the youth risk behavior survey in an extended advisory on April 5th. So all advisories at all grade levels had the hour-long advisory was just to take the youth risk behavior survey. So, and this was 2 weeks before seniors would be leaving us for each internship. So seniors were present in the building. I do not have a good reason why only 32% of students participated. We usually, as Dr. Roy says, get a good response. And that's routinely how we do it in a longer extended advisory. I was pretty surprised at that participation rate myself.
I see.
Yeah, it's just a puzzle. And as far as I know, it's been done the same. It was done the same way this year as in the past. So,
Well, and I think we typically do surveys in that manner, and we usually have the typical 75% return. Which is, so it is a surprise. It's a big question right now. Yeah, to figure that one out.
and it's important to do it the way they do it, because you can't. They have to all do it at the same time. Otherwise, they will talk to each other, and
Right.
it will mess with the responses.
And I guess in the spirit, too, of anonymity, we're not walking around looking and making sure that they're actually doing it, because we can't be checking in that way, because that, and the process of doing it on the laptops was the same way that we did it in 19, and doing it online it's the exact same survey as on paper. The only thing is that we don't have to send all the paper off to Dr.
Yeah.
Roy to then enter. So, I think there's, students obviously have familiarity with the, with the way that they do it. I think it would be an interesting kind of follow-up with kids if we could figure out, why do you think this happened? Because I think we're as surprised as you were. So.
It was done online in 2019.
Right.
Yeah, I think we did.
That
That was the year we had it. I think the only other, I don't even think this is an explanation, but it's more information. We also beforehand make sure the staff understands what the survey is for. And students are encouraged that they can skip any question they don't wish to answer, but the teachers know why we're administering this and what this data information it gives us about programming and next steps and things like that. And it wasn't a hybrid schedule, so I'm not sure what happened.
Were they given the opportunity to opt out of it?
Well, they can opt out of it in the sense that they can choose not to do it during advisory, but if you are in advisory and you are given the option to do it and it's explained to you. If a student opted out, they wouldn't tell the teacher necessarily. The teachers weren't asked to go around and check.
They just wouldn't
Right.
do it.
But teachers didn't say you have the opportunity to opt out of this.
Usually the phrasing is you can opt out of a question, but not out of the survey.
You know what I mean?
Parents can choose to opt their child out previously.
Thank you.
The other thing that's different this year is that there has been a 3-year rather than 2-year gap since the last YRBS was done in Beverly, and pretty much everywhere else in the United States. There were no surveys done in 2020, or very, very few, certainly no national ones, and very, very few local ones. So we're basically comparing kind of this last spring with the spring before COVID. So there's just this huge elephant in the room. In some ways, I think it's kind of remarkable that you've stayed as stable as you have. It's a little hard to know what that means without seeing a more recent other sets of findings. It'll be interesting, when the national and state YRBS figures come out to see, it just is hard to make sense of comparisons with pre-pandemic. There's just one other thing I would like to mention and that is that the survey this year included new gender categories. The surveys in the past always asked, are you male or are you female? Now there are three, as of this last spring, there were three other choices to that question. One was non-binary, another one was other, and then there was a fifth choice, which was prefer not to respond. In running the statistics, I ran it for all of them, but I only reported the male versus female figures. I did, however, and I couldn't do an analysis with the high school data because the groups were too small. As a rule of thumb, it just isn't advisable to do any analysis of a group 10 or smaller because you begin to get into anonymity and confidentiality question. But the numbers were big enough in the middle school survey to to look at it and compare rates of these non-traditional gender groups, and there were about 50 of them in the middle school, with those who reported being male and female, and they were much, and you can, I won't tell you all the statistics, they're in the middle school report, they were much more likely to report various things. Feeling unsafe at school, being bullied, feeling seriously depressed, reporting suicidal behavior, low levels of participation in physical activity and sports compared to the other kids. So that's those are sort of some highlights. Just appreciated the chance to be part of the process, and encourage you to look at the more detailed reports and examine their implications for planning, so on, keeping in mind the caveats and so on, and that you'll consider doing these continue to do these surveys periodically. So, yeah.
I have another question. How many questions are in the full survey?
I'd have to go back and look. 100,
Roughly.
and the high school one is longer. I'd say a little over 100 questions, and the middle school one, 90 maybe.
So do you think the number of questions is
Well, it's
an
the same
issue?
survey, though, so we did not alter the survey in any way, so it's the same national survey that gets,
I'm just
presented to all of them.
pointing out that, I mean, to do a survey with 100 questions for anyone, even myself, it's a lot.
Yep.
And so that may probably influence whether, and
It is long. The thing is, they have done it in the past.
Yeah, I think I find it really unique this year, though. I think that resilience and fatigue and all of those things are far more acute in our students right now coming back from the pandemic. That's one of the things we're learning at, watching trying to work on lengthy things is more challenging. I'm very curious to see when the national results come. I mean, is it just us that had that, and it may be different too, because we do administer it online. Other districts do too, but other districts also do it on paper, and maybe I wonder if it's more if it's easier to just not do the questions and turn in a piece of paper than it is to just sit and not do it online.
Fewer and fewer districts are doing it with paper.
Fewer and fewer, correct. I know most people are because it's silly to not if you
so
can.
I would wonder if you did it in chunks, if there were, 5 categories, and you tested for one category.
Well, then we couldn't compare
Periodically.
ourselves to the statewide or to the national, though, because that's this is not a Beverly survey. This is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's done nationwide. And so the collection of data and the comparisons are made based upon, that you do it the same way. It's sort of like the standardization of the administration. So I'm not sure if that wouldn't yield us the information. And we also couldn't compare it to previous years because now that would skew sort of the data collection.
I can tell you that sometimes you see with a long survey that some of them will fill out half of them or three-quarters of them, and then the ends drop as you get to the very end.
To the end, yeah.
That is not so
Okay.
with this survey. They either didn't do it at all, or they did the whole thing.
Interesting.
So that sort of tailing off at the end did not happen. Do you believe the statistics?
What do you mean?
As I say, the people working in the schools were skeptical, particularly of the substance abuse.
Thinking there was more?
Well, I'm not going to speak for them, but I wasn't in that meeting, but I think that in general, I think the reporting of vaping and the reporting of marijuana use would surprise me if we were really dropping in that regard. And yet that's only anecdotal. So, I mean, I think we have, this is self-report, this is what they're reporting. And so I'm not sure that I have any evidence to refute that.
I think if you think of a student in the in school taking the class or taking the survey and being honest with some of these types of questions, you just may not.
Except for that's like.
Why would they be less honest?
Right. We've given this thing for years.
Yeah,
right.
why
This is
now?
not a new and people have taken them. So.
I think some of our efforts with digital literacy and digital footprints and some of our training that we're giving our students at an earlier age about how anything they do online exists and is traceable back to us might be a factor. And as much as paper is a difficult way to have to then do data entry, it might be a way to make students feel more assured that anonymity is going to be maintained for them.
Or explain how we're anonymizing the data that we're collecting, because we definitely are anonymizing it. The IT department has worked, and has instituted a way so that it truly is anonymous data when it comes through. There is no way to trace it back. So maybe just some more education for students to understand that. I'm curious to see if other districts and if other states are experiencing the same low rate of return. And ironically, though, the middle school was right at where they normally are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
My knee-jerk response is that, and I realize it's done the same way, but if the system can be changed in smaller chunks, you may get better. I mean, business surveys is an art. It's a science. Having the right number of questions to make sure you get people to participate. 100 questions for students.
Well, I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the length of it is that there are built-in safeguards to say that you've answered the same, you're giving a response that's consistent across the survey. Is that true? Or I know that in some surveys that.
There aren't any sort of lie.
No, there aren't any.
So redundancy questions?
Yeah. Interesting. Well, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Sure.
joining us,
Interesting.
and thanks for sharing the data.
Sure.
And so that's all from the DOTS report that we have. I don't know, Karen, if there's anything besides just the upcoming meetings.
I'm sorry. That would be our next meeting will be on December 7th. The last thing we need is a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second?
Okay, and could you call the roll, please?
Sure, we've lost a few of our students, those that are still with us. Zanab?
Here.
Okay, so that's a yes to adjourn. Cameron Pisano?
Yes.
Allison Driscoll?
Yes.
Lorgan Sudak?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Rachel Abel? Yes. And Kate Twombly?
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see everyone tonight. This is the Beverly School Committee, regular school committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. We are meeting in a hybrid model today using a remote meeting application that is provided at no cost to our district, which allows for remote participation for the public access portions of our open meeting. We are also being broadcast by BevCam and streamed on their YouTube channel. Thank you, BevCam. With some system upgrades, the closed captioning is now available immediately on the BevCam channel and is applied to the recorded version on YouTube within 24 hours of this meeting. On June 16th, 2021, the governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and then again on February 12th and July 16th of 2022, he extended those provisions that, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. This specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to physically be present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access. We would encourage viewers to utilize the BevCam streaming options this evening if possible. As a note, Beverly has prior approval from the Attorney General of our state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts to have remote participation although through that permission, the chair and a quorum still needs to physically be present when this act expires. Tonight is a regular meeting, which means we have the opportunity on our agenda for addressing the body. To sign up, there we have a sign-up sheet with Ms. Bergeron, or you may email us in advance to request a link to the meeting or to send a letter for the chair to read into the record. To make those requests, we ask that you email residentvoice@beverlyschools.org. Again, residentvoice@beverlyschools.org. Today, joining us are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in just a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes does not show everyone that is participating. We also want to confirm that everyone can hear and see us. Please remember that if you're joining us on the remote platform, any audio or video that you supply will become part of this meeting record. As such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. And now I will conduct that roll call to make sure that we are all marked as present. Don't see Mayor Cahill yet. We'll keep a spot available for him. In person, we have Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Remotely participating, Dr. Kenan McKenzie.
Here.
We can hear you. Great. And Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
And Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Remotely participating, Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And again, I'm Rachel Abel here. We have Dr. Sue Chirocek.
Here.
We have remotely participating Dr. Andre Morgan.
Here.
In person, Ms. Sherburne.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Splansky.
Here.
Okay. Looking through my list, make sure I've let everyone in the room. We have our Executive Secretary, Donna Bergeron. Our Student Representative, Kaylee Quintinto.
Here.
Okay, sorry. Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Thank you. I think that's it. Oh, we also have Principal Betty Taylor with us in person. Okay. With that, our first order of business this evening, now that we've called the meeting to order, is to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Kaylee, would you mind leading us in the pledge? There's a flag right here now. Thank you, Kaylee.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Next, we have some recognition of students, employees, and community members, and Dr. Chirocek and Ms. Taylor, if you wouldn't mind.
All right. Hello, everybody. And we're here tonight. We have a special recognition. We received communication from the Commanding General Training and Education Command of the JROTC that we are happy to announce that the designation of Beverly High School as a Marine Corps Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps Honor School. And so I'd actually like to invite the members of the ROTC to come up and join us, along with
Major Martin.
Major Martin. And I'm going to read to you what we received in our communication. So first of all, in recognition of exemplary performance during the previous 12 months, Beverly High School Marine Corps Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps unit has been selected as a Naval Honor School in accordance with this reference. This distinction is bestowed upon your MCJROTC unit for the 2021-2022 school year. You and your unit are to be congratulated for attaining this distinction. It is through superior efforts of the units, such as yours, that the MCJROTC program goals are being achieved. The Marine Corps is proud of your achievements, and we wish you continued success in all future MCJROTC program efforts. And to that end, we received, I don't know how to show this up, but a beautiful plaque, and we'd like to present it to you for all of your efforts. We really appreciate the work that your units do in our schools and what it brings to our school community. So that's it. So congratulations.
Really quickly, I would just like to thank Dr. Chirocek, Mrs. Taylor, our Beverly leaders, as well as the Beverly community for all of their support for our program. I would like to thank our instructors because we would not be the program that we are without them. ROTC is such an amazing program to be in. They really build us as leaders and help us to grow as a person. And I am so honored to be a part of that as well as a leader.
President Abel, I'm wondering if we could take a short break for a quick photo?
Sure, we'll take
Is
a
that
3-minute
okay? All right,
recess. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that brief recess. Always exciting to have awards. We're going to hear next from our student representative to the school committee, Kaylee Quintino. And then the chair is going to take the agenda slightly out of order so that we can hear about a field trip. But Kaylee, you're first.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit of like the past month, October, and then the upcoming month, November. So like in the beginning of October, like October 12th, juniors and seniors took the PSAT and SATs. And then there was an event on October 12th, students as change makers, where students were asked questions on their views of being a change maker, and it was a really great experience. And on October 25th, there was a common table forum from like food from the culinary classes and catered from a different place too, where students were discussed like the environment at BHS. And then this November, we had the 8th grade open house for all clubs at the high school on November 3rd. And then the first quarter is closing tomorrow, November 10th. And then we have like early release and other stuff that's going on. But then as fall sports are officially ended, now we'll have registration for the winter sports season from like the beginning of the 31st of October all through the 28th of November. And then we'll be starting this senior breakfast club for senior students from Beverly High School, who will meet once a month between 8:30 and 9:30 with other adults from the Beverly Senior Center. And we have new additions to the clubs at Beverly High School, such as the Coding Club, Dance Club, Astronomy Club, and Alliance for students of color, and all students are welcome to join. And then the Guidance Department will be hosting a career education and discovery fair on Thursday, November 10th, which is also tomorrow, from 9:30 to 10:45 in the BHS cafeteria. And some organizations such as the Beverly Police, Fire Department, North Shore Community College, Gloucester Biotech Academy, and other programs will be there attending. And the Climate Committee will hold their annual BHS Halloween costume contest on the 31st, where prizes were given for the best costume for each grade. There's great costumes. And then the BHS Quiz Bowl attended the WGBH High School quiz on November 6th, which was, I believe, a couple days ago, at the WGBH studios in Brighton. And team members such as Jacob Johnson, Hollis Colby, Brandon Brophy, Ryan Dunlevy, and Carly Jones. And the advisor was Miss Fecto, also known as the school librarian at the high school. And yeah, those are just some of the events for these past 2 months. Thank you.
It's a great recap. So much going on. We thank you for your report. Thank you for being here. As always, if you have studying that needs to occur, you're welcome to leave or stay with us for the meeting.
I'll just stay for the field trip that's going on because it's my classmate.
Oh, sure. Senora Nichols. Yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Churchak, you are bringing forward this Field trip
Yeah,
opportunity.
if you don't mind, I'll just push the superintendent's report. I really only have one item on the superintendent report tonight, and that is an overnight field trip request. Allison Nichols is here. Allison, if you can come on up and join us. And Allison has shared with me a presentation that she would like to. The field trip request is for an overnight field trip to San Juan Jose, Puerto Rico, and running April 17th to April 21st of 2023. So I'm going to pull up your presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to you. All right. Wasn't that a didn't we send those as? Thank you. Yep, just make sure you turn your mic on.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Allison Nichols, and I'm a 7th grade Spanish teacher at Beverly Middle School. And myself and two of my colleagues, Edgar De Leon and Lydia Ames, want to present to you a proposal for a spring 2023 trip for our 8th grade students to San Juan, Puerto Rico. And unfortunately, my counterparts are not here tonight due to illness and prior commitments, but hopefully I can answer all of your questions and kind of give a good representation of what we're hoping to do. You can go to the next slide, thank you. So we wanted to share a little bit about why we travel and just how this has, our own personal experiences have opened up so many opportunities for us. And Mrs. Ames wanted me to share just how her first experience was when she was 12 years old traveling to Costa Rica, and just how life-changing that was for her and kind of paved the way for her, not only for her path of studying Spanish and studying abroad, but then ultimately becoming a Spanish teacher. And myself too, I actually didn't travel independently until college for study abroad, and I always wished I could have had an opportunity like this sooner. And I think I speak for both my colleagues as well when I say this is just our passion to be able to show our students something else of the world and kind of open their eyes as well to this opportunity that could be life-changing for them. Along with that, studies have shown that on average, students who travel do score higher on SAT tests. They're more likely to attend college. They're more likely to be employed full-time. Students are able to develop their confidence and own personal growth through travel, and have an expanded worldview and appreciation for other cultures, and also develop life skills that will help them in future education and careers as well. So I think, we all know there's lots of benefits to this, and that's what we're kind of hoping for our students. And this was just a quote that we loved. The best education you've ever had is received through travel. So what would we see on our trip? So students will kind of get a taste of Old San Juan and a lot of history in this trip, and historical landmarks that we'll be visiting. They'll explore El Morro, which is one of the oldest standing forts in the Caribbean. They will explore beaches, and we have excursions planned for snorkeling in the bioluminescent bay, as well as to El Yunque rainforest, which is a great opportunity to see kind of the nature and habitat there in Puerto Rico as well. So I have the itinerary here, and it's actually the last page in the packet that I passed out to you as well, has the full itinerary. It's a 5-day trip, but the 2 on the end are kind of mostly travel, 4 nights, 5 days. So jam-packed with different experiences that are all educational for the students, exploring Old San Juan, exploring El Yunque National Rainforest, an opportunity to see a bioluminescent bay, and kind of also giving an opportunity for us to make comparisons. And back in 2020 or 2019 when we proposed this trip then, we had come up with some ideas about a project for our students to do, kind of a pre-departure work, and then maybe post coming back from the trip to reflect on what they learned, what they saw, and thinking about just comparing these colonial cities and the history that we have in Beverly to the history that they saw on their trip. So there's, and the next slide is just the itinerary continued, shows some of the other excursions that would happen. Breakfast and dinner is included each day. And kind of along with that of what is included, it's round trip transportation, 4 overnight stays in a hotel, breakfast and dinner daily. We have a tour director and tour guides for all of our sightseeing. It includes entrance into everything that we would do. There's overnight security chaperone. There's a tour diary that they will actually update along the trip with updates that parents and families can see. And it includes tipping as well on the tour. So the total cost for the tour per student would be $1,948. And that includes all of those things, like I said. This accommodations, they book, I believe, 90 days out. So it's this is an example of what a hotel could be. It would be this or something similar. And there is travel protection. So that's $16 a day or $24 a day for their Plus program. And that covers insurance, injury, sickness, cancellations, loss of luggage. For those of you who were here back in 2020 when we were going to do this, we do feel really, it's the same company, Explorica, that we want to do this with, and we feel really confident that everyone got their money back. And although it was, an unfortunate experience and circumstance, we feel confident that this is a reputable company and they really did what they could to make it right for everyone. So now I presume people will want travel protection, so they have that option. There's some payment options that students and families can utilize, payment plans that they have, pay in full or monthly payments, and then manual payment plans. And we've been thinking a lot about fundraisers as well. They have fundraising support, so each child would get their own personal fundraising page, and they can accept donations from family or friends. And then they also have financial assistance based on family need and with confidential applications that families can fill out. And then we hope to do some fundraising as well as a group. And I know it's a quick turnaround, but we're hoping kind of to get some things going for the winter time. And really just kind of get like a first trip under our belt, and hopes that in future trips we could have more time to have students fundraise and save. And that's really it, I think.
I'm sure we have some questions, but to get things started, Mayor Cahill.
Make a motion and then we'll do questions? Sure. So
Absolutely.
I move we approve this trip.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
And I'll ask a couple. Senora Nichols, it's so good to see you. This is exciting. How many, with 3 chaperones?
Yep.
How many students are you hoping to take?
So with 3 chaperones, we would need 18 students. So it's a 6-to-1 ratio. We talked a lot with Dr. Trocheck also about kind of the variables of, we don't know what's going to happen when we put this out there. Could there be too few students, or could there be an abundance of students that want to do this? And so we've kind of thought about that. There's actually no limit on Explorica's end. So they said their buses hold 55 students, and if that exceeded, they can get another bus, and just kind of talked through with us. If we have a limit, then we can do kind of first come, first serve, who applied first. And if there's too few, then we're going to have to pull a straw for which adult gets to go, because we all want to come. But I think we'll see.
Okay. And I saw here on the page, but not on your slide, that a couple of the evening events were listed as optional. Is it at the option of the group or the individual students, or?
No, those are things we would plan. So they're kind of giving ideas of this could be added as well. Or taken away depending on what we decide we want. But this is kind of the rough sketch of what
It all looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. Thanks.
Do we have other questions?
I think this is great.
Yeah. I had one question. I didn't see lunch. I saw the breakfasts and dinners. Is lunch just grabbed on the road?
I think lunch is out while we're on excursions. I think maybe some of the excursions will include lunch, or it might be something where it's kind of like we're getting it while we're out, and that would be up to the child, I think, but I can find out for definite.
Okay.
Say that.
I'm looking online. Yes, I just realized we usually get a question about nurses, and go ahead.
Actually, I was going to go with if in fact there was more than 18, where would you get additional chaperones? How would that be handled?
We have a fourth Spanish teacher who would be the first person that we would offer it to. And then we have lots of teachers who have already said they would love to join. So I don't think we'll have a shortage of people who want to help out if needed. And if the school committee or the superintendent says this is kind of the cap, then we would go from there to see, okay, now who's the first ones to sign up, and maybe we need to do some sort of lottery or something, depending.
Dr.
I just want to
Churchick?
say in that regard, when we met, we are not sure. Like there could be an abundance of people. We talked about the fact that, in particular, some of the students in this age group haven't had a lot of experiences to do things, so it might be a really popular thing. And also, my conversation with the three of them was, so how many students do you feel comfortable in terms of the group size? And I think we were still thinking and talking about that group size because I do think it's the first away trip for many of these students. And so, just thinking about for safety purposes and for logistics, what is a reasonable number of students in to go in one trip? So, and especially as it's the inaugural trip for a middle school overnight. I know we had one all well planned, and then the pandemic hit. So those are the considerations that we were having, and I think we're still thinking about in terms of that. Again, not knowing what the response from the students is going to be.
Ms. Robinson?
Do you remember how many students were going to go last time? It seemed like a lot.
I think we had 18 or 20, or
Yeah, it
maybe
was
exactly
between 18 and 20. It wasn't
because it was
anymore.
3 of us who were going, and I think it was 18 or 20.
It was 18 to 20.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if we don't have any further questions, we will need to do a roll call vote because we have some remote participation. I will do the alphabetical list with myself last. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes. Your trip is approved.
Thank you.
Let the students know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have for superintendent's report, so.
We will return to the order of the agenda as it was presented. So our next item of business is the approval of our meeting records from the October 12, 2022 regular school committee meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any corrections, edits, or amendments that we wanted to put forward? I'm not seeing any. By roll call vote, Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie.
I abstain. I was not there.
Okay. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. That's 601. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have an open forum for resident voice for input into agenda or non-agenda related items. Do we have anyone that signed up, Ms. Bergeron? Is there anyone in the room that's here to speak to the school committee? Okay, moving along. Next on our agenda is items by consensus. We have letters A through E listed on the agenda for warrants in the amounts as shown. I would like to entertain a motion to approve them as a group.
Second.
Yeah.
So moved. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Second.
Oh, Ms. Coelho and then Ms. Robinson. Okay, we'll get there. Ms. Bergeron, we have Ms. Coelho with Ms. Robinson as a second. Thank you. We generally don't have any questions. The warrants are presented for inspection, but yes.
I do have a question,
Okay.
actually, for this. And I don't know if this is difficult to do, but would it be possible to have a short description of what these warrants are? No.
I'll briefly tell you that 3 members of the school committee, plus the mayor and our business director, review munis reports generally on Tuesdays of each week, where each of the invoices is presented against the purchase order that the district has created for the expense. And we, in essence, look through the vendor names, the description of the materials or services provided, the dollar amount, and the purchase order being put in place, and verify that they're school-related expenses. And those are available in the business office. So if you want to become part of the party
No,
that looks through the milk and the bread receipts, and a lot of Salem Plumbing. Not to pick a vendor, but we seem to have a lot of plumbing issues. Mayor Cahill, go ahead.
Just a few, I mean, in recent things that we've looked through and signed off, things like special ed transportation, curriculum, materials, trainings. You mentioned some of the nuts and bolts of the buildings. And
Yeah, I mean, I just bring this up as someone who, if someone from the community is looking at this agenda, they're not going to know what this is. And if there's a small description, they'll at least understand where, what the.
So a description of what a warrant is and what is included.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I just bring it up because as someone who's looking at this, this just means a lot of money is being spent, but it kind of would be helpful to have a perspective of where the money is
Sure.
going.
Sure, and many of these are payroll as well.
And
So
that's perfectly
why
fine.
The amounts
Just
are
a
so-
parentheses
Yep.
payroll is
Okay.
useful.
Okay, we will work with Ms. Bergeron to see if we can do that. I see Ms. Visnick's hand.
I would like to add 2 things. One is that in the past, we really did take turns. Everybody on the school committee, but then because of COVID, there was a stretch where only you reviewed them. And then now we're in this other stretch where 3 of us review them. So maybe there will be a time when we go back to everybody gets a turn to review them, just in general, and then Dr. Silva would get a chance to join the party, as you said, I think. And my suggestion of what might be helpful is kind of the cost centers. If we're going to change what goes on the agenda, right? To say, like, for instance, one of those that goes to, in essence, B&G. One goes to special education.
Yeah.
One goes to food services. And then if somebody that might be that categorization might be the top level filter. And then if somebody wanted to ask more about one of them, maybe that would be enough.
I think that's perfect. Yep.
Sometimes they're mixed together, but yeah, I'm sure we can
Oh.
figure something out.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions about the group of warrants? We will take a roll call. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Mayor Cahill?
yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0, thank you. And now, school committee chair updates. I have quite a few. Let's see. It was an absolute pleasure to return to the MASC conference on the Cape, and I highly recommend all members mark your calendar now. It's usually the first week of November, Wednesday starting around noon through Saturday around noon. I can't recommend it enough. It was just a very inspirational and educational opportunity as a school committee member. I had been a couple of times. I missed the last year, but I was really pleased to be back. I brought some reflections, just very high level. I mean, there's so much more that I think that we will, sort of dig into as we continue our work this term. But I just want to highlight some of the panel discussions, delegate assemblies, dinners, and keynotes that I attended, as well as reflect on the one that we presented ourselves. So the first panel that I attended on Wednesday was a systemic approach to equity. The school committee from Framingham and their superintendent explained how they had taken steps in their district specifically to change things such as registration to welcome center, to try to use a red carpet and dignified approach for all families coming into the district to make people feel immediately like they belong. They have adopted some of the technology features of Zoom that provide immediate translation, just like we have speech to text going on our screen now. Technology is now allowing families to participate more in real time since the translations are generated for them. They've also changed the word parent in all their materials to caregiver. They've really emphasized the fact that not all of our students and learners are being represented by parents. And they've also put a lot of thought into the different groups that they have in their district and have a focus on employee resource groups. They're also working with embassies in Spain and Brazil to get pathways for exchange teachers to join them in the district so that they have teachers that natively speak the languages that their families are speaking. And so they've actually done some work there. They've also implemented lots of pathways for staff to get their bachelor's or their master's or have a pathway to becoming teachers in the district where they live. And so much more. That's just a brief summary. The next panel I attended was a consortium for innovative educational assessment tools for increased educational equity. And this was an interesting one. The consortium members that presented were Milford, Revere, and Winchester, so some variety of districts. And the focus of this consortium is to provide measures beyond the MCAS test. Really, they're focused on the portrait of the graduate, something that we are familiar with. But the work is focused on the hopes and dreams of students and measures of real success, real successful outcomes for students. They talked about the catch-fire approach to rolling out what they call tasks or QPAs. So they're measurable learning units that have clear alignment with standards and curriculum. It's a little bit like, I kept thinking it was analogous to our project-based learning that we do here in Beverly, where these tasks or QPAs are based on real-life scenarios, they're interdisciplinary, they're collaborative with teams of students. But the aspect that this collaboration or this consortium has is they actually provide surveys to teachers and students to make sure that what the teachers think the students are receiving is actually being received, whether the engagement is authentically there or not. And so the consortium provides a platform for constant feedback between staff and students and surveys. So there's some measurement aspect to the way that they conduct these mini projects. And one of the things that they talked about is as they develop the tasks and QPAs, they're actually intentionally setting a pause in each activity to put an equity lens on it to make sure that the design of these QPAs has that equity focus as well. There were lots of examples, but again, I want to keep it brief and move on. I next participated in the delegate assembly. I thank you for nominating me to represent us. I encourage somebody else to step forward and enjoy this event. It extended well beyond the time allotment. It was long, it was passionate. In the end, each of the resolutions passed. A couple were wordsmithed a bit. Many had amendments made to them, which did not get adopted. I think an overarching theme was concern amongst the delegates about where the school committee lane ends.
specifically the 6th resolution related to Chapter 40 funds. Again, that was the regional school districts. They wanted to have a sort of a stabilization aspect. And in the end, they were able to justify to the body how it fit in our lane. But I think the most impassioned speakers that came to the podium to argue for some of the resolutions really focused on the rights of our trans students and also those districts that are in receivership. I think those two topics that we had, discussed really were at the heart of it, and there were a lot of feelings in the room. Anyway, so each of those resolutions, obviously, it's not binding on the legislature, but it will be presented from the MASC Resolutions Committee to our legislatures collectively. So those will be moving forward. I think a big reminder to us is if we have our own resolutions that we want to start working on to send forward, we should do it sooner rather than later. I think, 1 or 2 districts had a lot in there, and if Beverly wants to be part of that conversation, we should, consider what's important to our students and our families. That night, I went to the dinner where Commissioner Riley addressed all of us. Thursday morning, we started with a keynote with respect to student mental health crisis that's occurring right now, and the behavior health needs being, off the charts, and how that is really a strain on our educational system as well as our mental health systems. So there was so much to unpack with that. And then Beverly presented creating and promoting equitable conditions in schools. I would describe it as standing room only. We actually gave our chairs from the presenters table out to the audience, and still there weren't enough chairs. People just packed it in. I think the key takeaways that Dr. Trocheck, Dr. Morgan presented were an awareness is not enough, and that equity is not a checklist. I think those were two of the main themes. But really, the two presented so many ways in which Beverly has been creating equitable conditions here in the district, and how it is not a 1 or 2 year project. It's really an ongoing systemic way of taking a lens to every single thing that we do. After the presentation, so many people stayed. They skipped their lunch to ask additional questions. And I have to say, for the rest of the conference, people were coming up to me left or right, giving me email addresses and really wanting to learn more. I do owe a few people a couple of the cleaned up slide decks as well. After lunch, I went to a panel on entry planning for equity-focused leaders. This is a session that was sort of focused to the superintendents, but there were a few school committee members in the audience as well. And it was about ensuring that your entry plan into a district identifies the right problems to solve. Obviously, people come with certain skill sets and certain impressions on a district, but you really need to take time to listen to all the stakeholders and to make sure that the goals and direction that you put forward align to those problems that need to be resolved. The encouraging message was to pursue action as a coalition and not as an individual for those new superintendents or leaders, and to focus on amplifying any impact that you're making. We then all met in the Grand Ballroom for a general session entitled Surviving and Thriving in Challenging Times. And I think there are two takeaways that I'll just quickly share, but again, it was a really rich opportunity. I think understanding that we have problems and we have dilemmas. Problems are things that have solutions, and dilemmas are things where we need to provide coping mechanisms, and understanding that you can't solve everything that is a problem. The speakers encouraged us all to consider using 5 assumptions as we go about our work. The first assumption is I have information, so do other people. The second, each of us sees stuff that the other doesn't, so we need to recognize we all have blind spots, as do other people.
Third is people can be disagreeable and still have positive intent. Fourth, differences are an opportunity for learning. And the fifth, I might be contributing to the problem. So, again, so much more. I just leave it at that for now. Friday's general session was leading and implementing equity with intentionality. Keynote speaker was fantastic and also brought a panel of different roles across the district, including a mother from or a caregiver from the Boston School District. That was just really heartfelt. The keynote speaker, I should have written names down. I'm terrible with names, but equity should be a verb. It is a way of being. It's not a noun. It's a verb. It's a way of being. And he reminded us that most microaggression is caused when people are on autopilot, so not working with intentionality. And to remember, it's not your intent, but it's your impact. So he encouraged us to self-interrogate. Talked about the windows and mirrors aspects, but to be intentional and state the outcomes of your work. Examples include perhaps our buying practices. Who is included in our buying, our purchasing, and who is left out. He encouraged us to save 15 minutes each day to ask yourself, what did I do today to further equity? Also recommended a book that I went into the Harvard bookstore and they didn't even have it, so I've got to find it, Humanity Over Comfort. So looking for that to add to my library. I then went to a panel hosted by our own school committee counsel, Liz Valerio, and a few others. It was about rethinking public comment periods at our open meetings. I took a lot of pictures of her slides and still have a lot to digest about some of her recommendations. But really, all of us are waiting on the ruling from the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court for docket 13284, which is Barron versus Board of Selectmen in Southborough. That's something that actually hit the news while I was driving down there and heard a little bit about when a public body is able to silence someone in a public meeting, and we're eagerly awaiting the outcome of that. I next went to our District 1 meeting, which is our local school committees in the North Shore area, and I got to meet a lot of people. There was a lot of new members in surrounding districts, as well as our chair is actually in the Peabody School Committee, a long-serving school committee member. So basically, the question posed to us is how do we reinvigorate our division meetings and our meet and greets and those types of opportunities to exchange with surrounding school committee members. There is a Facebook page, albeit not very active, but we definitely talked about some ideas, and as those dates formulate, I will make sure to be sharing them with all of you. And then finally, Friday late afternoon, I participated on the Mass Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School panel. I was with two other districts that basically used up all the time, so I ran through ours very quickly, but the people that attended still had questions after we did that, and we had a lot of people approach, including the Burlington School Committee. They actually are very eager to learn more about what we're doing, but I picked up that award for our nurses and their Safe Routes to School work. Generally, we just discuss the success of the program, all the resources that are available through the state, how it has expanded to include middle and high school now. And so as Nurse Elder reported out to our CISL subcommittee just earlier today, that will be a part of their professional development. And they have a plan for additional activities that will be coming. I'm sure you're going to talk about that in your report, so I'll save that. But again, it was just such a rich experience to go to be with other school committee members, other superintendents. At the dinner, I sat with like Brookline and just other communities to hear what their challenges are. I think they're all slightly different, but all slightly the same in the same way. So definitely encourage that. Let's move on to our next item, which is the superintendent evaluation. For this, I thank everyone. Yes, Mayor.
Just thank you for going and thank you for sharing. That's pretty great
It
stuff.
was great opportunity. You're welcome. Thanks. For our superintendent evaluation, as a reminder, each of us participated by providing our reflections and scoring using the rubric that the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education provided us. It was in our packet, and so I think that we've all had an opportunity to look at the detail at the compiled report. I just wanted to, at a high level, review this, and then an action that we'll take is to accept this as the final evaluation for the prior school year. As you'll see in the summary report, average ratings came out as met for assessing progress towards goals. As you look down through the performance standards, proficient and proficient exemplary were the summaries there. Overall, the summative performance based on those two steps rates Dr. Chirocek proficient. And there are a number of evaluator comments that were synthesized in this section. Lots of thoughtful comments about Dr. Chirocek's work in the district, a few things for her to consider for this new school year. And specifically, there's some call for more explicit numbers and data to corroborate the performance of meet and exceeding. That's actually a couple pages. There's quite a few comments in that section. If we look down into the individual performance goals in this area, the average rating are all met. You can see we sort of scattered between significant progress met and exceeded, and they average out to met across the board. If we go down into the actual highlighted focus indicators, we are showing for curriculum and instruction a rating of proficient and an overall rating of proficient for instructional leadership. Again, with lots of comments from each of the members compiled. For environment and human resources management and development, again, proficient and exemplary, with an average, overall average being proficient. Again, quite a few comments. Then for the third standard for family and community, the focus indicator for engagement was marked as proficient. Again, mainly proficient with one exemplary. And in this comment area, the overall was proficient. I think there are some really important comments in this section as well, to make sure that our families are feeling welcome in the classrooms, but also some comments about meeting families where they are. I think at the conference we heard a lot of that as well, about go to the places where the caregivers are. On the next, for the fourth, professional culture for cultural proficiency, again, proficient, and in this case, there's two exemplary, still averages out to a proficient, with more comments. And I believe that takes us to the end. There's a lot of encouraging words towards the end about looking forward to the future work in this area as well. I don't know if any member had their own reflections based on the composite evaluation, or if we just wanted to go ahead and make a motion to put this on file.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we'll take that motion first, and then.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Quayle and Ms. Robinson, and Dr. Silva.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Chirocek for meeting with me, with it being my first time and spending time with me to go through it. So thank you.
Great, I'm glad you took advantage of that offer that she had made. A few of us have done this a couple times, and it's still confusing too, how to fill this in and how to look through the folders, but gotcha. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands online. Are we ready just for a roll call vote? Okay, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Quayle?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. Okay. Your evaluation is complete, and we look forward to speaking with you next week about the goals for the next
Correct.
year.
All right. Thank you very
we'll
much.
bring that to the committee of the whole. Thanks. Okay. Returning to our agenda, we have some dates to remember. I did want to do a quick shout out. The middle school PTO tomorrow night is having a program called Minding Your Mind. It's about teens and technology. There is a Zoom link available to the community. It might be useful for us as well. I mean, some of us still have middle schoolers or soon to be middle schoolers. But I think it's for anyone that really wants to, understand some of the mental health implications that come along with technology use and social media and all those other things. I think they say teens, tweens, and tech or something like that as the tagline. So the link is available. I can get it to anyone that needs the Zoom link. It's a special one for Beverly. Friday, I talked with David Parent-Chief. The Veterans Day ceremonies will commence at 8:30 in the Farms. There'll be a visit to the hospital memorial at 9:30 and at 10:45 at the Vietnam statue. I'm not sure that we all got that timeline communicated. Just wanted to make sure people were aware on Friday. On Saturday, the Big Craft Fair returns to the high school auditorium. Oh, no, where is it? It's going to be in the field house, actually. It's going to be a big one. So that will be a welcome return. And then next week, on the 16th, so 1 week from tonight, we will be back in this room meeting with Facility and Finance and Committee of the Whole. And one of the agenda topics we intend to cover is the superintendent's goals. Let me know if there are any other topics for Committee of the Whole. And then just a reminder, the holiday parade will be kicking off 1 p.m. on the 27th, so it's the Sunday after Thanksgiving. We are registered to walk. I think we usually meet up around noon at the high school parking lot, so we'll be kicking off from the parking lot at 1, so plan to be there in advance around noon 12:30. And anyone that can join, just show up. Are there any other dates that I maybe neglected? We'll very quickly get into December, but we'll cover some of those next week. Okay. We have standing committee reports, finance and facilities. Ms. Visnick.
Thank you, Madam President. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities last met October 26th. In addition to our normal business, we had the Director of Food Services, Christina Leal, as our guest speaker, and she presented on a number of topics. One is that supply chain issues and staffing continue to impact her department, and the supply chain issues are most impactful to children with allergies. She presented the numbers of meals, breakfasts, and lunches that are being served, and then the numbers are just continue to trend higher. The children are receiving free meals again this year. That's awesome. You get your first meal for free. If you're a mom of someone like Ian Visnick who eats 2 lunches, you have to pay for the second one. The best news that she presented, in my opinion, is that the share tables are back in all of our schools, and that there are posters on display that show what foods can be added to the share table versus what cannot. And so for people who don't know what a share table is, when you buy a school lunch, you are mandated to take something kind of from each food group so that you have a well-rounded meal. And not every child wants to eat all of those items, and so a lot of those items get thrown out. But instead of throwing them out, some of those items can then be placed on a quote-unquote share table, and then other children can take those leftover items. It's almost like a trading center. So in phase 1 of the reintroduction of share tables, we can, for instance, accept bananas and oranges, but we cannot yet accept apples or the fruit cups that come pre-prepared from the cafeteria staff. And there are reasons for that, and we're working with the Board of Health about what can be accepted and what cannot be. And during the next phase of implementation, hopefully there will be refrigeration available. And when there's refrigeration made available, then additional items will be able to be reclaimed instead of going into the garbage to go into the share area, including but not limited to milk. The next thing we talked about was especially in the concept of the district-wide operational sustainability committee. Our director of finance, Ms. Dean, presented on the topic of recycling, and that there are statewide changes relative to recycling. And so in conjunction with Ms. Arena Keefe, Jean presented a bunch of flyers that are being distributed, hopefully through everybody's water bills, that talk about these statewide changes. And one of those changes specifically is that textiles are no longer permitted to be put into the garbage. And in fact, our community has, for well over 10 years, recycling bins at each of our schools. And so residents, we're trying to help communicate that you can't put your textiles in the garbage anymore, but look, we have these options for you. You can just take them over to a bin at one of the schools, or we also spoke to the fact that if you have gently used in-season items, we would really strongly encourage you to take those over to Beverly Bootstraps. They're a wonderful community partner. If you have something that's out of season or not so gently worn, by all means, please put them in the boxes at the schools, and the PTOs benefit. They're paid by the town. So not only do you keep them out of the waste stream, but you're benefiting the PTOs. And one additional option is that if you're a member of the curbside compost program, you can purchase bags from Black Earth, our compost vendor, and then you could place your textiles in that bag on the curb with your compost bucket, and Black Earth would pick your textiles up for you. Okay. Yeah, yes, Madam President.
It's actually just use a plain white bag, but you purchase the stickers from them, from Black Earth.
Okay. Okay. So that was kind of what we talked about in the meeting, and now on to our business of what the committee brings here. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities brings forward with a recommendation to approve the additional job position of Assistant Transportation Director.
I will make the motion that we add the Assistant Transportation Director position to our district.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do we have any questions about this position? It was included in our packet. Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. Madam Chair, could you just walk through the rationale for the need for it? And this is, I'm assuming this is full-time? And the need for full-time? Thanks.
I will speak to that, but I also see in the table behind you, the Director of Finance, Mr. Kern, who gave us a presentation on this topic. Do I see Jean back there, or no? In the room, Rachel. Is Jean there?
She is. She's coming to a microphone.
So the Director of Transportation is right now currently out on the bus and not in the office many days, so that's one of the reasons. Plus, we want to have a plan that maybe we have somebody else in the office that knows how to do what they need to do in there. And we did have some funding available in the transportation budget to hold this position. But what we really need is somebody that's going to help with the runs. And what's happening right now is the director is out there driving the buses during the shortage. But we did feel that it's something that we do need in the department.
And Ms. Sherburne, I'm just going to add, I did take some notes because we had, some more discussion about hoping that a candidate that applies might be a certified CDL trainer, assisting with routes, as you mentioned, increased homeless transportation and complexity, working with different vendors, and also just having an opportunity for training and succession as well as vacation coverage, not to mention just when they're driving. I thought those were all things that I picked up as
Yes,
a bystander to that meeting. Yes.
So I wonder if bringing in a couple part-time bus drivers would help, or why that wouldn't be sufficient?
So right now that there is such a bus driver shortage throughout the country, not just here in our area, that is, we're bringing in. Dana came in today with a CDL driver that he's hiring, but we have an awful lot of openings right now, and what's happening is that we're condensing the runs the best we can to get the students to the school. So he's more out on the bus than he is in. But actually, it's not just that he's out on the bus, but it is the day-to-day activities that's going on in there without having him in the office, and having somebody else know how to condense a run. We just feel it's something that we've been talking about every year. We bring it forward in our budget process, and it just never makes it because we have other needs that are greater, but we're finding that we do have a little surplus to be able to do that, and we'd be able to sustain it.
I would like to pile on and say that we also talked about the fact that I'll use the word as efficient as possible right now in order to use the limited driver resources that we have to accomplish all of our runs. And if anything goes bad, it would be like, the beginning domino. And so when you're in a situation where you have no slack, it just makes it that much more stressful. And the fact that our director of transportation is our slack, in essence, any given day, the fact that he needs to drive a bus himself, that means he's not doing the job that we really hired him to do. Yes, it would be wonderful if we could hire more bus drivers, but there is this little nationwide shortage of bus drivers. So there was a lot of conversation about that. And I think that, I'll just double down on what Jean said too. FNF has looked at this multiple times in the past, and we have the opportunity to do it now, and there is money available to do it now. And last but not least, then it does give us an opportunity for succession planning.
Okay, I saw Ms. Robinson and then Dr. Turchek.
Thank you. Do we have a budget or a range for this position?
I do believe we said between 60 and 65.
Thank you.
What's the range for a bus?
Sorry, Dr. Silva, we have Ms.
Sorry.
So,
Dr. Turchek.
I just wanted to add on, there's a lot of discussion and conversation about the bus driver shortage and, and the sort of things that are tugging at Dana in the immediate, need right now following the pandemic and following all the things. However, the complexities of running the transportation department actually warrant an assistant director. That's where I feel right now. When we are transporting our students across the district and the amount of decisions that need to be made that directly impact the safety of our children and our safe arrival and dismissal of our kids and the maintaining of the routes that we decide on. And there are many, many complex issues that are going on. And I really do believe we've sort of been on a shoestring, so to speak, in the past. And then that becomes more exacerbated given what we're coming off of. The efforts of Dana, I could not understate the amount of work he works well above and beyond what we could almost expect for anyone, and the amount of work that gets done by our drivers and people, within the transportation department, they're second to none. And so I really do believe, I just want to be clear, the actual position of assistant director is one the role right now warrants. We have a lot of decision making and a lot of work that goes on in our our goal in Beverly is to have as many kids safely ride the bus as we can possibly do. And so in order to kind of maintain what we do in that department, we believe that this position is really important. That's not to minimize the driver shortage or some of the impact that some of those things have had on it. But whether we were having that or not, I think that right now, given the department and the amount of work that's going through the office on a regular basis every single day, that it warrants this position. So.
And Mayor Cahill, then Dr. Silva.
I think I'd like to defer to Dr. Silver because I have about 8 questions.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Silva.
So, I wonder in terms of the software, there was some software that was used to help manage the routes that was brought on to help alleviate some of the work, the effort needed to run those routes. It seems like what's driving this is the shortage of the drivers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say the shortage of drivers, but also the complexity of what is happening. And we have maybe there's a student issue on the bus. And so if Dana's out driving buses or he has to be in multiple places.
Well, I didn't mean
Maybe
to.
somebody isn't aware there's a meeting going on.
Yeah,
I believe
obviously.
so. I would just add to what Jean's saying. I mean, there are, I don't know exponentially the impact that every single time we have a new student that needs to be transported on homeless transportation, we have to bid that out. The special education runs are far more complex than they have ever been. So the workload warrants this position, not just a shortage of drivers. I think that was, I don't want that to get lost in what we're saying. The work that needs to be done in the transportation department, we are talking about transporting students around our city and around our state in some cases when we have some of our homeless and special education runs. So, the actual work load is what warrants the position, not just a shortage.
Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. Can I ask, how many office employees are there in the department? I'm trying to remember.
2. We have a bookkeeper and a dispatcher.
Okay. So those are 2 full-time in the office, and then Dana as the director.
Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Trochik, you've made the point a couple times that the department and the operations and the complexity of things, and you've echoed that, Mrs. Sherburne, really justify an assistant. Can I ask you, you referenced funds available now. Are the funds that we're seeing available because we have condensed runs this year? Because if that's the case, we don't really want to be doing fewer runs with fewer drivers and monitors. It's just that's where we are. So if that's the source of the available funding, we're going to have to then figure out how to build that in as a full-time benefited position.
So the runs that we have right now are efficient. We have full buses, and they're efficient. If we wanted to add buses, we would have to open up new runs and open up buses. But our funding, the funding sources actually, I think, in the revolving. Is that correct?
Yes, we have, it's both between the revolving account and the appropriated.
Okay.
And we would have the revolving funding available.
And I would add that we made adjustments to our transportation budget based upon the number of homeless and special education students that we're transporting. And so we have to make sure that we're able to do all of the work that needs to be done.
Appreciate that. I guess I struggle with what you just said about the fewer runs, full buses. I believe we could fill more buses. I know, we've talked about this. I think some of us have talked about it. I, for one, would love to see us transporting many more kids. I know that ultimately means more buses, so more capital costs, more drivers, more monitors. I do think it's a goal that, we transport, I'll get it wrong, but about 1,500 out of 4,700. We transport over 2 miles. As a community, these are big challenges, right? The goals of doing our best to create safe walking and biking routes under a mile, trying to offer bus transportation opportunities under 2 miles. What about that between 1 and 2 mile space? recognizing that in certain instances, it's not really possible at present to hold out safe walking and biking routes in certain spaces. So, I mean, there's a lot that feeds into that. But since we're talking about it, I'm also not clear on just how many of our special education students who are out of district, either in the collaborative or out in a private special ed setting, how many of them we're transporting versus how many we're contracting to transport. And I, look to all of that as areas that I don't know, I'd like to be part of digging into, because and if all of this is what is behind the ask for an assistant, I get it. Is that what we're really talking about? All these different components and how to manage them and how to successfully.
So as I said, we have looked at the operations of transportation department, including all of the different the software that was added, the need to decide on routing, the need to do a lot of things, and have determined that we really, at this point, given the size of the department that we have, transporting 1,500 kids, this is not a new ask. We have discussed needing an assistant director of transportation for a very long time. And so this is not something that has just crept in now. So, again, we're coming to you. This is, given what we've looked at and what we've thought about and what we think we need to have to continue to safely transport students, as well as increase students as the number of students that we transport as a goal that you've just stated. This is a position that we feel it will be important to us as we go forward.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Visnick, and then we'll go back to Mayor Cahill.
I wish to attempt to address some of the things that Mayor Cahill said. I too would love if we were transporting, and we know we have a demand. There are people who live closer than the 2 miles that want to get on a bus, and we don't have capacity for them right now based on the runs and how full the runs are because of the, I'll say the efficiencies we've had to institute because of the bus driver shortage. I would love it if more people got on a bus instead of all the people driving their cars. And if you've ever tried to drive across town right around the time, in between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, it's terrible. And so if we could get some of those cars off the road, and we talk about, the sustainability committee and trying to do the right thing for our environment and being good stewards of the earth, it would be absolutely fantastic if we could have more children on buses instead of in individual cars. But to accomplish that goal, that means we need more drivers. It means we need more buses. And with more resources, then you're asking one person to do even more work to manage those resources. And so it's just like any other position, relatively speaking, to say, okay, I'm going to ask you to do more work with no more resources. And finally, the last thing I want to say about that is I think that more people would put their child on a bus if we weren't charging so much money. And I have proposed to this committee before, and I will continue to do so, that just like we eliminated the parking fee, we might be best served if we eliminated the bus fee. And if we look at what do we really want for our goals as our city and across the district, then maybe that is, it will be a tension. Let me make that very clear, because without that income, how do we pay some of those salaries? But if you really want to get cars off the road by putting children on buses, then one way to do that would be to eliminate the fee. But again, then all of the other things have to happen. We need more drivers, we need more resources, and I don't think that it's reasonable to ask somebody, even if this job wasn't already asked for, it's not reasonable to ask somebody to do exponentially more work under the same conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Mayor Cahill?
I guess the superintendent has just made the case that we need an assistant to help run this department. As I said, I want to see this department operate at an incredibly high level because I think we can and should be looking to do more with transportation as a district. So I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Are there any other committee members that still have remaining questions? I'm not seeing any hands. I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel? Yes. 7-0.
Fantastic, thank you. Hopefully next one will be much less contentious. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends acceptance of the incredible donation of $17,475 worth of sailing equipment. This donation comes thanks to Mr. Paul Earle and other members of the Beverly Sailing Association. He explained to us that members of the Jubilee Yacht Club raised funds to purchase boats from Boston College and sails from the Intercollegiate Sailing Association. They presented this donation to us at our September meeting, and members of FNF are grateful to present it to the Committee of the Whole for a vote of acceptance.
With much gratitude on behalf of the school committee and all of our sailors on the sailing team, I would like us to accept this.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Are there any questions or comments from the school committee? Not seeing any questions. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel? Yes. That's 7-0.
Thank you. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends acceptance of gifts to schools in the amount of $175 for the Hannah Elementary School from Microline Surgical Staff Giving for general use.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I heard Ms. Robinson only because of the internet delay, but Dr. Morgan will get you, Dr. McKenzie will get you next time. Okay, it's $175 for the Hannah School from Microline Surgical. Any questions? By roll call, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0.
The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends acceptance of the transfer number 288 that is in your packets.
The chair will make a motion to approve the transfers number 288 on the Munis report. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do we have any questions or concerns? Calling the roll, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Thank you.
Our next meeting is scheduled for 1 week from tonight, November 16th at 6:30 p.m. in the Beverly Middle School Library, virtually via Zoom or for viewing via BevCam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Visnick. And Ms. Robinson, of Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life.
Thank you, President Abel. So the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life met this evening, just before this meeting, and we heard from our student representatives. At the high school, we reported that a lot of students had just finished up early action for college admissions. They're getting their applications in, and juniors and seniors have been attending a lot of college visits at BHS. At the middle school, they just held a Boo Bash, which was very well attended to raise money for Nature's Classroom. Seventh graders had a visit from the NAN project to promote mental health awareness, and eighth graders have visited the high school for extracurricular and sports activities for next year. School adjustment counselor, Erin Fitzpatrick, who's part of the district-wide crisis team, gave a presentation and an update on planning and safety training, mainly around dealing with safety concerns, specifically involving consistency around threats. Nurse leader Jody Elder gave a presentation around the Safe Routes to School program, and President Abel presented Nurse Elder and the nurses from Beverly with a plaque from MASC for their work in this area. Just some of the things I've been focusing on. The elementary schools have, for Safe Routes to School, the elementary schools have done walk, roll, and ride days. The middle school is learning about rail safety, and the high school, they're focusing on distracted walking, because not just because of texting, but also because of kids just walking around with AirPods. So, and then finally, Dr. Richard Woy shared the results of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And he reports that not a lot has changed since 2019, which was the last time the survey was administered in the schools. Not much has changed in the high school or the middle school level in terms of numbers reported. It seems that substance abuse has gone down a bit, but I think a lot of administrators are questioning if that's for sure the case, especially in terms of vaping. But and only 32% of BHS students actually took the survey, as opposed to, I believe it was about 70% or more in the past. So we're not really sure what happened there. And I would definitely suggest to get some numbers and percentages, to take a look at the CISL meeting. There were slides presented on many different risky behaviors, and I think there was a lot of good details that would be helpful for anybody here or anybody in the audience to take a look at. And our next meeting will be held on November 7th. December 7th. That would be the other day. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. The negotiations subcommittee has, I think, tentatively set a meeting for next Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. in McEwen with Dr. Trocheck to discuss her goals, so that we might recommend them to the committee of the whole later that evening. Other than that, we do need to understand we have current contracts with all of our bargaining units. However, we'll need to start looking at some sooner than later. Dr. McKenzie, does the policy subcommittee have anything to report out?
Sure, we just have a quick update that we have been working with the wonderful Ms. Bergeron to start indexing all of the policies that we need to review. So we've come up with a way to be able to separate out those that we are reviewing and to think about how to have them be updated in a live way without having to refresh the entire document. So we do have tech support to do that, and then we'll be able to start parsing out and getting to the specific policies that we need to update. So thanks, Ms. Bergeron, for that help, and thanks, Rachel, for connecting us.
Sure. That's great. And I think I still owe a set of minutes from last year's meeting. I'll have to get those to Ms. Bergeron as well. I do have it recorded, so just a matter of transcription. Okay, the last item on our agenda this evening is our communications from school committee members. Does anyone have any to report out? Ms. Coelho?
So on the 27th of October, they had the Safe Trick or Treat downtown from 4 to 6. And then right after that, our little Centerville kids scurried right back over to Centerville for family math night and the first annual Jack-O-Lantern walk, where the fourth graders got to make their own jack-o'-lanterns, and they placed them along the walk, and the kids got to go through the pathway and see them all lit up, and the fourth graders were so excited for that.
Sounds great. Any others? I have two that I'll just bring to the table. I had a caregiver reach out to me with some concerns about communications home from her child or her student's teacher, as well as some of the school messaging about student orientation dates and curriculum events. I've referred her to Ms. Blansky and Dr. Trocheck. I think that will be addressed. I also had a constituent question about hiring and positions and how the school committee handles positions. I think that I explained that relatively well. We had an example here at our meeting tonight. So I did have the opportunity to go to the pumpkin chucking con. I had to leave a little early. The Yellow Jackets really liked me for some reason. I don't know what it is about me, but I got a little spooked by some Yellow Jackets and ended up leaving. But I was just so impressed with how many student representatives were there. I think I even scared your daughter because she didn't know who I was. And I'm like, hey. But our student representation at these community events, especially for sustainability, is outstanding. I would encourage more students to join in on the fun because it was absolutely a treat. I think I just missed the mayor. I saw some pictures that you were there as well.
I think there were 1,800 people there. They were counting. That was 450 last year, 1,800 this year.
Wow. So
amazing.
Yeah.
The whole crew of people who do that are fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Silva.
I just wanted to announce that the Beverly Lacrosse Boosters Association put out a grant to the Bill Belichick Foundation and received, basically were awarded a grant to provide sticks for boys and girls lacrosse. Those sticks have been received. The equipment has been received. There's actually another a goal as well, so we'll be able to add that to the inventory of equipment that we have for lacrosse. The sticks have been handed to the youth programs for the boys and girls, and that any sticks that are needed for people that are in need financially, can't afford to purchase a stick to play. We'll try to encourage the use of the equipment for that purpose. And this week I met with the art teacher at the high school, thanks to Principal Taylor, who coordinated the meeting, to engage the honors art students to paint one surface of the wall as a project to engage the art students with the lacrosse team and maybe have some type of school pride theme on the wall. So hope to do that in the spring.
Okay. Ms. Visnick, I see the hand now.
That's okay. I'm just sitting here with an ice pack on my knee and trying to be patient. I got a communication that also went to Dr. Chirochek around our high school students who take the MCAS and then maybe do not score high enough to be considered to be able to graduate, and how we as a district handle that versus the fact that the state handles it. And that perhaps there could be better coordination in between the two. And so I didn't really do anything with that because that email also went to Dr. Kurchek. But I think that when people send you an email and we have this part of our meeting, then they kind of expect for their issue to at least be brought forward or talked, mentioned. So I simply mentioned that we received that email. Dr. Schwarchek and I, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I was gonna
Second.
say, do we all want to stay? Okay, so thank you, Ms. Robinson, and thank you, Ms. Coelho. Not debatable, so roll call, Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. McKenzie,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes, 70902. We are adjourned. Thank you, BevCam, appreciate it.